on the supposedly least dangerous branch, district judges versus Donald J. Trump. This hearing is a joint undertaking by the Subcommittee on the Constitution and the Subcommittee on Federal Courts because our country is facing a constitutional crisis, a full-blown judicial assault on the separation of powers that strikes at the very foundation of the republic. What we're witnessing is the rise of judicial lawfare from the bench. One unelected district judge sitting in a courtroom in San Francisco or Boston or Baltimore can now issue a nationwide injunction that ties the hands of the President of the United States for all 330 million Americans. That's not law, that's judicial tyranny. President Donald Trump was elected by over 77 million Americans with a constitutional mandate to govern. These district judges, they were not elected. They were appointed by one individual and confirmed not to legislate, not to govern, but to apply the law. And yet, far too many of them have abandoned that role. They've stepped off the bench and into the political arena, issuing sweeping edicts that impose their policy preferences on 340 million Americans. Let's walk through just a few of the most egregious recent examples. Economic policy. In New York City, the Court of International Trade struck down all of President Trump's tariffs under IEEPA, declaring that they exceeded executive authority. It was not judging, it was judges replacing the president's judgment on declaring a national emergency. And of course, that ruling was almost immediately stayed by the Court of Appeals. Deportation policy. In Baltimore, the chief judge for the District Court of Maryland issued an order preventing the removal of illegal aliens detained anywhere in the country, granting 2 days of automatic protection to anyone who files a habeas petition in Maryland, all without a hearing or legal findings. This single Maryland judge dictated national deportation policy and then tried to claw back the damage by amending the order. As chairman of the Subcommittee on Federal Courts, I'm investigating this overreach, and I've sent a letter to the Judicial Conference of the United States. But the judges did not stop there. In D.C., a judge blocked the federal government from requiring proof of citizenship to vote, overriding election integrity laws across all 50 states. In Boston, a judge weighed in on birthright citizenship, deciding a question of nationwide consequence for millions of illegal aliens, despite the plaintiffs being solely one pregnant mother and 2 nonprofit organizations. That's absurd. That is policymaking and legislating. That is not adjudication. In Boston, a different judge blocked a Department of Energy rate cap, handcuffing efforts to lower taxpayer costs for energy research. In Rhode Island, a judge ordered the federal government to immediately disperse tens of millions of dollars under the Inflation Reduction Act and other programs. The Department of Energy alone was forced to release $50 million by judicial fiat. In San Francisco, a judge mandated that the Office of Personnel Management rehire all terminated federal workers and restricted future firings, effectively turning the judiciary into an HR department. Yet another Maryland judge halted orders intending to stop funding for institutions mutilating minors through so-called gender transitions. These deeply consequential decisions were blocked not by voters, not by Congress, but in each instance by one unelected judge. And it doesn't stop there. Since President Trump returned to office in January, there have been over 40 universal injunctions issued against the federal government. That's in 4 months. 35 of those 40 came from the same 5 judicial districts. Let's put this into context. In the first 150 years of the Republic, 0 nationwide injunctions were issued. 0. That's for 150 years. In the entirety of the 20th century, 27 nationwide injunctions were issued. That's over 100 years. Under Presidents Bush, Obama, and Biden combined, 32 nationwide injunctions. Under President Trump's first term, 4 years, 64 nationwide injunctions, and now in just 4 months, we're already over 40. In 4 months, the Trump administration has seen more nationwide injunctions than the entirety of the 20th century and more nationwide injunctions than Presidents George W. Bush, Barack Obama, and Joe Biden combined. This is not normal. This is not justice. This is an orchestrated campaign of judicial obstruction. Joe Biden, when he was president, nominated to the bench radicals. I have said, only slightly tongue-in-cheek, that Joe Biden did something I used to think was impossible. He made me miss Barack Obama. But by comparison, the Biden judicial nominees were far more extreme and radical than they were under Obama. They sought out radicals who would implement policymaking from the bench, and they are doing precisely that. That is not democracy, and that is not our Constitution. This hearing is to highlight the effects of this judicial tyranny, of single judges deciding they know better when it comes to policy than do the voters of America. We need to defend democracy.
Thanks for watching, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to our channel. And while you're at it, please leave us a comment. Thank you for watching.